Welcome to the Genius Talk podcast. I'm your host Atul Raj from the bestemailmarketer.com, and today we have Dr. Rose Vogt with us. Rose, thank you so much for joining and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Okay, so for our listeners who don't know you, can you tell them who you are and what you do?
Sure. My background is a doctorate in clinical psychology. I have kind of brought that world into working with where my area of dissertation research was, which was in the area of mindfulness and using mindfulness, specifically a type of insight or vipassana meditation that was secularized for clinical settings called mindfulness-based stress reduction. So I'm using really my background as a researcher in that area and working with people to apply a new neural programming technique. It's an advanced neural programming technique that leverages what we call in neuroscience the window of reconsolidation. So it allows people to just call into the conscious mind memories or experiences without having to talk in detail about them. And we're able to use these techniques to actually sever the connections, if you will, between those neural connections and reconnect them with maybe more empowering beliefs, ideas, and actually remove the emotional intensity out of a memory. And it's really a very amazing discovery, but it's not actually applied readily yet. A lot of people are finding it through energy psychology techniques like EFT tapping or EMDR, but we actually do have the ability in real time to help command the brain to heal. And so we can remove that emotional intensity and reconnect those strong bonds in the brain, those neural connections that are playing that old trauma, and connect them with a positive association. And you don't actually lose a memory, but you'll lose the emotional intensity or the trauma connected to it. And that is what helps people shift and make better choices in life. So when we can access really easily in an hour something that has really been an impact in someone's choices, whether they're on an entrepreneurial track or, whatever it is in life, when we can remove those intense memories or the intensity of those memories that's kind of driving maybe, not being able to step into something they're trying to create, suddenly people have more choice. They have an expansion experience of being able to move into the things that they are desiring to create in their lives. So, I work with people one-on-one, I work with people in groups, and I'm just trying to help people be able to step into creating the life that they love.
Okay, so what pulled you into this work?
Well, when I was just in my undergraduate years, I had a car accident. Someone sort of hit me from the side and stopped my car in a very short distance. So I took a lot of impact and ended up having chronic pain issues. So I was sent to this chronic pain management center in Boulder, Colorado at the time. And they were teaching, very new, they were teaching John Kabat-Zinn's mindfulness-based stress reduction. So, it took another almost 15 years before it was back in my life from a studying standpoint when I got back into grad school, because I went on my path and was working in corporate and then eventually shifted into academia, and I taught and actually had the pleasure of working with chronic pain patients at a chronic pain management clinic in California. So I ended up working with the population of people that was right back where I started with learning mindfulness, which was very gratifying because it is a huge tool. So that seed was kind of planted, and then it just took living life and experiencing a lot to kind of grow into how important that piece would be in shaping what I do. So that's kind of where it started for me.
So, what is survival mode in simple words?
Yeah. Yeah. This is, as I said, I work with, people at all stages of life, but in working with midlife women, I've started to sort of focus on, what are the predominant issues that, that can be a challenge, especially with all of the biochemical and hormonal changes that are happening at midlife. But these are pretty universal. So I think anyone at any stage of life, no matter who you are, is going to relate. But we tend to be, because we're so bombarded by constant stimulation externally, the videos, the ads, the short form content. There's a lot of externalization of our focus. And we tend to also, by doing that, fall into these problem solution oscillating sort of structures. It's like, oh, I know I'm not sleeping very well. Let me take in some content about how I can improve my sleep. And, maybe it's not my sleep. Maybe it's my diet. Maybe it's not my diet. Maybe it's my, need to clean up my relationship issue. And it's just constantly outwardly focused. And all of that time, we are cueing our nervous system with this one strong message, which is something's wrong, something's not right. And so that puts us in survival mode. It puts us into a sympathetic overdrive, and it makes it very difficult. So it's the reason why our digestion, our sleep, all of these things, and even the relationships, because we can be very reactive and sort of kind of empathetic and grounded. But it's a biological aspect of the nervous system being in survival mode. But it kind of becomes the backdrop of our life when we're constantly seeking, what is it that's going to help me shift out of this? And it's not going to be any one specific solution. It's going to be actually addressing that sort of underlying substrate of existence, which is not, oh my gosh, something's wrong and I have to find the answer. But okay, I'm actually okay right now. I'm not broken. I'm okay, but I need to, for every cell of my body, to understand that we're right here, right now, and we're okay. And when we can do that, the nervous system then downregulates into parasympathetic, and we can be in that rest and digest mode and begin to heal and begin to access our creativity. It's like that's the magic place of the power of the present moment.
So in survival mode, we don't show empathy and we are only like react, right?
Yeah, when we're in survival mode, the most human part of our brain, where we are capable of being in that, using them, being empathetic, accessing the experience of having our mirror neurons firing, that's the prefrontal cortex, which is not where we're pulling from when we're in survival mode. We're firing the amygdala, which is the fear center. We're just really kind of, I would like to think of it as sort of on our back foot, right? We just feel like life's coming at us too fast and we're kind of reacting. We're not grounded, we're not centered, and we're not able to access, those deeper, more empathic responses, those creative responses. And that's, in your question about survivor mode too, creator mode is that parasympathetic place because we can access those places and then we can feel like we're actually in control and creating our life instead of just responding and reacting and feeling off center.
So how can someone know that they are in survival mode?
Yeah, there are going to be a lot of signs. I mean, some of them I've already mentioned, but we're going to, generally feel like we're always reactive, not going to, probably experiencing some digestive, sleep, or skin issues, because when the body is stressed and we're in more of sympathetic overdrive, those detox pathways and the digestion and our capacity to really rest are offline. So that's going to cue you, okay, something has shifted me into sympathetic overdrive. And it could just be even the pace of daily life, the exposure to too much blue light from screens or from, unnatural lighting late into the evening. It could be any one of those things that has triggered your body to sort of lean toward the sympathetic, you know, nervous system versus the parasympathetic. So that's why things like mindfulness, coming into the moment and realizing, oh, wow, yeah, I'm feeling really wired, and being okay, like just that's how it is in this moment, but it's not going to be like that forever. It's the same when we have a thought or an emotion. If we can be in that mindful moment, we can honor that we're having that experience, but that we are not that experience. So we're not our thoughts. We're not, one state of the body or the other. We're not an emotion. We are just experiencing it. And so when we can be present to ourselves and allow that experience, then we can make choices that are going to help serve moving out of that survival mode. And sometimes that starts with just simply being in the moment and using the breath to be in the body, and then realizing, oh, okay, I can actually do that. It doesn't mean you have to suddenly do a 30-minute meditation. A lot of people feel like, oh, I can't meditate. It's not that you can't meditate. It's that, like, it'd be like saying to someone who doesn't run, okay, go run a marathon. You haven't conditioned yourself for it. It's not going to end well. So that if you haven't been meditating, then yeah, even 5 minutes could feel like a lot, but you can start with 30 seconds. You could start with a few breaths and just say to yourself, okay, I'm going to set a little alarm every hour on the hour. I'm just going to breathe for, for just a few seconds, for just like take that moment, just even building the step in your day to just get more present, or every time you do a transition, every time I leave my desk, every time I'm coming or going, whatever it is. If people commute, great time to be with your breath and just relax the body. And so as you do that, you're conditioning your mind and your body, just like a marathon runner conditions their mind and body to have that endurance physically, emotionally, psychologically, all that. You're doing the same thing when you can get present, and it can help reduce anxiety. And that is the path really to sort of shifting out of that chronic survivor mode that so many of us find ourselves in today.
Okay, so is there any consequences of staying in survival mode for a
Yeah, actually, is a lot of wear and tear on the body. It does downregulate our detox capacity. And, the unfortunate reality is we live in a world that, where we're constantly bombarded, and the food, the air, the water, we're constantly taking in exposure to different toxins, and our body is amazing and it can handle it. But if we are in sympathetic and not giving ourselves the time to be in parasympathetic, then those down-regulated detox pathways are over time going to cause, that's going to build up in the body. It's going to cause the headaches. It's going to cause the mystery symptoms. And a lot of times what happens is it begins to cause symptoms because your body's still asking for help. And that help, of course, needs to come in the form of allowing it to do its job by shifting and down regulating into parasympathetic. But what happens is we get symptoms. And if you go to, for assistance from Western medicine, which has its place, it's amazing, especially in emergency care, and there's so many other ways. But just for a symptom like, oh, I'm not sleeping, or my digestion is off, or this, we're going to get it. Now we have a drug in the system and it might help on some level as a band-aid for that issue, but then now you have to detox that drug. So we've just added another thing for the body to manage. So, and I
Mhm.
think people just aren't in modern culture, we aren't taught really how to listen to our bodies. And in some ways, maybe even taught subconsciously to fear, like, oh God, I have this. Oh God, I have that, and then people Google it and it's
Yeah,
even
yeah.
scarier. So just knowing that a lot of these things, especially early, are just the body asking for help. I need more downtime. I need to detox, and there's so many things we can do. Hydration. It's just a simple thing. Getting really good, clean water in our system regularly is a huge help to the body in the detox burden, and then, of course, exercise. We can sweat out a lot of toxins. Really good restorative sleep, which of course is very disruptive because people have their devices close to them. So finding a way to have a period of time before you sleep where you're not exposed to blue light. There's also, of course, the blue light blocking glasses, which can be some help as well. So all of those things, they're really simple, but it's all, if you think about it, excuse me, we evolved living much closer to the earth. And now we're very removed from our experience on the earth, living in modern life. And so anything we can do that
Yeah.
takes us closer to that, going outside and putting your feet in the grass, is an amazing anti-inflammatory. It helps us regulate how much we're exposed to non-native EMFs. So any of those kinds of things that you can do to sort of live more like humans are supposed to live can actually put you back into creator mode and help your nervous system.
So how do you explain the MAP method?
Oh, yes, sorry, the MAP method. So the MAP method is something that I'm certified in, and it stands for Make Anything Possible. And it was founded by Colette Stryker and her son Val, and they worked with a psychologist from Canada named Dr. Gary Flint. And he had worked on developing this in something he called process healing for, probably over 3 decades. And they essentially worked with him in his retirement and asked if they could really use his body of work and then add to it and continue on. And he was quite honored that someone would take the body of work that he created and actually breathe life into it for another generation. So it was transformed into something called the MAP method. And it utilizes a few foundational, breakthroughs that he kind of did over his career, which is finding out in working with people who had severe trauma that there is this part of the subconscious brain that actually supersedes and is above all of the trauma and the experience, that is an ally that we can utilize to help in the healing process, which is fascinating. And he worked with people who had really severe trauma, and so he was dealing with multiple personalities, so dissociative identity disorder and things of that nature, and severe complex PTSD. A lot of people are familiar with parts work because of internal family systems is kind of more well known today. So he was doing very deep parts work with a lot of damaged and very traumatized parts. And interestingly, as he did that work, he was constantly coming up on this part of their essence, their trueness, right? Their personality that was above that trauma and could help integrate those pieces. So in sort of discovering that, he created a body of work that helped really leverage that ally. And I like to describe it. We call it now in the MAP method, we call it the superconscious. So we call this superconscious development work because we're working to develop the main personality and integrate the parts by leveraging that superconscious level. And I like to talk about it as, you could have a weather pattern. It could be raining or snowing or sleeting. But if you got on a plane and you flew up above the dense cloud bank, you're going to get up and see the sun shining up there. You're going to see the sun and it's going to be clear. And that's the superconscious level of the subconscious mind. There is a place where there's clarity and sight, and they can see, the superconscious has the capacity to see infinitely into and around all of this other stuff that's the cloud banks, the different parts of the personality and the struggle. And we all have those, even if we haven't had these really traumatic issues or these dual diagnosis situations. We all have parts, and we even use it in our language. We'll say, oh, part of me wants to do this, but part of me feels that I'm not sure because of this other issue. So those represent these parts of us that have had these experiences. And we also all have these protector controller parts from our early days, in our first 5 to 7 years of life, where we very, in a literal sense, took in like, oh, that's actually bad, just because kids are just, very straightforward. This happened and that was bad. Like, oh, I spoke in front of my class and somebody giggled and then a bunch of people giggled. And, maybe it didn't even have anything to do with what I was saying. Maybe somebody's, little guinea pig got out of the, the show and tell thing, right? But it was just a ruckus. And it was like, oh gosh, everyone was laughing and I was standing there. And now that is sealed in our memory. So every time we stand in front of a group, we have those fears. And that's the protector controller part of us is actually trying to protect us from having a negative experience again. And so in using the MAP method, as I talked about in the beginning, we're able to remove that emotional intensity around memories because all of our beliefs and memories are basically the stacked experience, right? We have a memory, we create beliefs around that experience, we have another one. And so when we can go in and remove the emotional intensity, suddenly the beliefs and all of the ways we view the world shift. And it's kind of a trippy
Okay.
experience, but that's really,
I have one question.
yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So when someone say gut feeling, so does that gut feeling come from having a past experience?
Well, it's a few things. There's a gut feeling that's a true intuitive hit, and there can be a sensation in the gut that is oh, I've been here before. So you have to be able to discern, is this from a fear? Because that person in that scenario, when they stand up in front of a group, I guarantee you they probably have butterflies in their gut. But that could be the fear of, oh, I'm standing in front of a group, it might go badly. And so, using the map in that scenario, we would just talk about standing in front of groups. We don't even have to talk about that specific example. We could just say, oh, I'd like to be able to stand in front of groups without so much anxiety. Great. And then all of a sudden, without saying any more, we just use superconscious commands, and you have already brought into the active experience your awareness of what it's like to stand in front of a group. And so the superconscious can actually access that, in the space that we're just sitting there and using these commands that are part of the MAP method. And you'll notice as those commands are doing that the superconscious is doing its work, and suddenly you're feeling the intensity of when you recall standing in front of a group or think about doing it, suddenly the intensity of the anxiety is literally shifting in real time. And, they've had tests with, people with severe phobias, and within an hour, severe phobia of heights, for example, is completely relieved. So it's kind of amazing when someone can have a lifelong phobia and, they can't even go up on a balcony or look out a window up high. And then suddenly they're like, oh my gosh, it's fine now. And it's actually just removing that, those two neurons were connected around a memory that was very strong. And when we say, okay, now we're going to address that, And as we do that, we're calling on that. So it's firing, and that we're saying super conscious, this is a problem. We don't want to feel that emotional intensity of that one time when we were scared up high. And in that window of reconsolidation, we have the opportunity for that neuronal connection to actually shift and break. And so it doesn't have to be that strong reaction anymore. And as we do that work, we ask superconscious to bring in positive experiences now. So we can have a positive experience around being in those situations. And suddenly, someone's going from being deathly afraid of it to feeling actually really happy when they're doing it. So it's amazing that we have the power to do this with our brain. It's really fun work to do.
Okay, so what role does music or sound play in healing?
Yeah, I think it's a really powerful part of healing, and also could be a powerful part of that journey to being in that parasympathetic state that we were talking about. So leveraging the tools of music, sound, vibration, anything that you're having a really positive reaction to that can allow you to relax. So, and then weaving that into your daily experience, I think is really, really important for people. And everyone's going to respond to different things. But I do think that there also is a difference between enjoying music and being in
Mhm.
parasympathetic. So sometimes music is beautiful, but because it makes us feel really alive and
Yeah.
it's really activating, having that discernment, like I enjoy this because it makes me feel happy. And then there's this other music or this other thing I can do that's more calming, that's slower. And this goes back to the shamanic, the shamans knew they would use the drum beats. They knew how to allow music to access um, you know, different brain states. And in doing
Mhm.
that, could more quickly get people into those healing places, those places where they would call the liminal space, right? Where we can kind of almost feel like we're having a mind trip and leaving our body, and we're in that expansive aspect of the universe. So when we can find music or breath work that allows us to also dip into that, that's really healing in that parasympathetic mode.
Okay, so for our listeners who want to know more about you or get some help from you, where can they go?
Sure. My website is drrochellevogt.com. So it's drrochellevogt.com. And if you go there, actually, if you add /gift, GIFT at the end of that URL, it'll take you to a page where you can get a guide called The Healing Power of Presence. And that's a great way for people to start with a few different breathing techniques.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that gift with us. And it was really great chatting with you.
Yeah, this was wonderful. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.